Alright, today's video is on the distributive property. I like to think of the distributive property as everybody gets one. So if you look at my meme here with Oprah, it says you get a meme and you get a meme, everybody gets a meme. I'm going to show you the video that this comes from, and then we're going to talk about the distributive property. Alright, here's the video.
Everybody in the audience, now listen to me carefully.
She's explaining that everybody is getting a box,
and I don't want you to open
and they're not to open it yet.
Cameras are on. Not open until I tell you. All right, open your boxes.
Alright, so everyone that gets a car key wins a key. And what you're going to see is everybody got a car key. So everybody's going crazy. And Oprah starts going, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, and everybody gets a car. And that's what distributive property is all about. Alright, so what does Oprah have to do with the distributive property? Well, the distributive property is about making sure that you pass out whatever is on the outside of the parentheses to every single thing inside the parentheses. And the way we pass it out is we multiply it. So whatever number is on the outside of our parentheses is going to be multiplied by everything inside our parentheses. Because we're in high school, we may be multiplying by positive numbers and we may be multiplying by negative numbers. So I do want to remind you that when you multiply by a positive, that does not change whatever sign you have there. So positives stay positive and negatives stay negative. But if you are multiplying by a negative, it is going to change your sign. So when you multiply by a negative, it's going to take your positives and make them negative, and it's going to take your negatives and make them positive. So let's look at some examples. We're going to start with one that just has numbers. So this should be pretty easy. I've got a 5 on the outside of my parentheses. I'm going to multiply it by this 3 and by this positive 2. So notice whatever sign is there in front of the second number stays with the second number. So 5 times 3 is 15, and 5 times positive 2 is 10, so this becomes 15 plus 10, and that does equal 25, and we could combine those because those are like terms. If I was doing that with a negative number, still going to multiply it by both items inside the parentheses because everybody gets a car. We're just multiplying by a negative, so I need to remember that it is going to change the sign. So negative 7 times positive 10 becomes negative 70. Negative 7 times this positive 7 becomes negative 49. So this is negative 70 minus 49. And those are like terms. I could combine them and I would get negative 119. What we're going to see more likely are things like this next example. Once again, I'm taking the number on the outside and I'm going to distribute it, multiply it by everything on the inside. So 5 times x just becomes 5x. 5 times plus 4 becomes plus 20. Here's another example with a negative. So just remember, when you multiply by a negative, it makes everything its opposite. So we're going to do negative 8 times 3n. Well, that's going to become a negative because it was positive, so negative 24n. And negative 8 times this negative 2 becomes positive because whenever we multiply by a negative, it becomes its opposite, so that becomes plus 16. Now notice on these I did not combine those terms because these are not like terms. One has a variable and one does not. What about if your number is behind the parentheses? Well, that would still be the same thing as long as there's not something indicating that we're adding or subtracting or dividing. So I can distribute this way as well. 4 times m becomes 4m. 4 times minus 9 becomes minus 36. When we're multiplying by positive, those pluses and minuses do not change. What about if I multiply by a negative? They are going to change. They're going to become the opposite of whatever they are now. So negative 6 times 2y, Well, negative 6 times 2 is negative 12, so that's negative 12y. Negative 6 times plus 3 is going to become minus 18. And once again, I cannot combine those because one has a variable and one does not. What if there's a variable on the outside? Do I still multiply it by everything on the inside? Why, yes, I can. This is what we talked about last week. X times x is just x squared because we're multiplying two x's together. X times minus 2 is just minus 2x. Once again, even though both of those have x's, I cannot combine them because one is x squared and one is just x. What if there's a number and a variable out there? Can I still distribute that? Why, I most certainly can. So negative 2y times y, well, negative 2 times 1, because remember it has a hidden coefficient of 1 if we don't see something there. Negative 2 times 1 is just negative 2. Y times y is y squared, so we get negative 2y squared. Negative 2 times positive 3 would be negative 6y. And that is how we use the distributive property.